AIC 2018, Asia International Conference 2018. Alhamdulillah, here with us we have one of our distinguished professor by name Professor Rasiah, and he will be conducting this workshop on entitled Philosophy and Methodology of Research for Social Science. Prof, permit me to read a bit of your background. Professor Rajah is a professor of economics and technology management at the Faculty of Economics and Administration, University of Malaya. He was the first holder of the Khazana National Chair of Regulatory Studies and a professional fellow at UNU Merit, and a member of the Globalix Scientific Board and an advisory member of the Industrial Development Research Center, Zhejiang University. He is also a member of the National Science Research Council, Malaysia, and an advisory member of the Export Committee of Ministry of International Trade and Industry, Malaysia. He has contributed extensively to projects commissioned by UNCTAD, World Bank, ILO, UNIDO, UNESCO, UNDP, and WIPO in Africa, Asia, Latin America. He obtained his doctorate in economics from Cambridge University in 1992 and was a Rajawali Fellow at Harvard University in 2014. He is the 2014 recipient of the Kelso Furtado Prize from the World Academy of Sciences for his contributions to the field of social sciences. He has published more than 300 research articles in Scopus, ISI indexed, and impact factor journals. He has supervised 32 doctoral theses and 18 master theses. I'm sure there's an update to this. More than 100 scientific papers have been presented since 2007 at various international conferences. About 17 books have been published in national and international publishers. His work has been cited extensively. Professor Rasiah is here with us today, so let's use the opportunity to talk to him. You're welcome, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the practical account of me. I wish I can live up to the way, the glowing account you gave of me. I think there will be a new account of me tomorrow when the keynote is presented. This is an account, I suppose. I have to really congratulate you guys to self-provide and find material from me.
And we will try to update. Tomorrow it shall be updated. Meanwhile, if you want to know more about Professor, just ask Uncle Google. And may I also use this opportunity to welcome Professor Aminu Ayuba from Nigeria. He's also going to be one of the keynote presenters tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. First, let me say a very good morning to all of you. I'm not sure if I'm going to teach a duck how to swim. I'm sure some of you are probably more experienced, more incisive in the way you approach a topic like methodology. But let me, given that I was invited to give this lecture, let me just give my account of it, which is not going to be easy in 1.5 hours because this is something I teach over a whole term. But let me try to be brief in the way I present it. First, I'd like to mention that I've tried, all the time I tried teaching this, I tried to reach as many different topics in social sciences as possible. By that I mean, the way I approach this discipline is one of trying to appeal to an economist, trying to appeal to a sociologist, to a political scientist, to an anthropologist, and the rest who are there as interdisciplinary subjects like development studies, people who work in areas like that, or multiculturalism, and so on and so forth. Now, in the context of that, I'll try to use examples, but try to be short though, because we only have 1.5 hours. In the way I teach, we also have experimental labs and so on, which is not going to happen today. And we'll try to approach this subject from the way concepts are derived, what drives the concepts, and from the way structures are made of not just a value chain of what should happen between conceptualization, between collection of data, the analysis of that data, and subsequently how you present your results. In other words, they are all interconnected. Some people who study lifelong learning talk about learning as a process that starts from the womb and finishes with the tomb. But if you're religious, it probably will continue in Akhirat. I'm not getting into those things yet in this lecture. Now, we'll also address critical issues in research methodology. And one needs to understand that despite the fact that people are trying to seek objectivity, as Amartya Sen has often underlined, there's always subjectivity. It depends on where you stand. Your position will determine what is objective for you. It's a bit like, I've seen this in WhatsApp. You know, it's quite nice, even though it's quite simplistic. If you have a number 69, one standing here will say, yeah, I see it's 6. The other one says 9, both are right. Right? So it is that sort of thing you must understand exists in research. That it will include sometimes you might have sent a really robust insightful paper to a journal, massacred by someone who doesn't understand the work. It can happen. But what do you do under such circumstances? I'll also try to address that. If I don't in the lecture, please let me know once I finish. Bounded rationality and limits to rationality. One needs to also accept that a lot of people feel that statistics, it's a robust field that there's no ifs and buts about it. Now that's nonsense. I myself come from a very quantitative background, but anyone who knows the field as such, even in the sciences, there are limits to that sort of rationality. There are limits to that. We are all driven by assumptions, and the assumptions need not apply to the real world. Of course, sometimes you can apply it. If you're an engineer, you know how a particular level of that you require to build a condominium, say. How many concrete beams you might send inside, that's fine, because you have a laboratory example to use, and you know how seismic rocks, flows of movements of rocks and so on, all that information. Again, that information can change too. Over a period of time, there may be new discoveries that will show that there could be other forces. Until that is reached, that sort of engineering knowledge can be applied in reality. Just like how operations are done using robots, smart robots, keyhole surgery. Now, I always mention the concept of philosophy must determine the methodological approach that should be adopted to undertake research. A number of my students, and I'm not sure if they are among you, some of them, they are already trained in certain statistical methods. There's a set of guys, I can also mention names later if you want, who love this Granger causality test. And everything they do will be related to the Granger causality test. But that would also mean that the kind of work they do will be limited to only that sort of approach. Now, if you are given a question, say the government is hiring you as an advisor, asking you to solve a problem with a particular disaster, you can't be using this. Now, this is the sort of approach I'm mentioning, that you need to be able to conceptualize using the philosophical underpinnings. Remember that all fields were born from philosophy, whether it's medicine, in the time of Socrates, in the time of Plato and so on, everything was philosophy. Archimedes was a scientist, but everything that he did was in the womb of philosophy. Economics is one of the fields that was born very late. In fact, before economics was born, Isaac Newton was advising the British government on economics, because serious economics didn't exist, even though Adam Smith was already around at that time. So there's a fundamental and there's difference between ontological and epistemological origins of methodology. There's research where you actually collect anthologies. If you're an anthropologist, you want to see how a certain aboriginal group lives. Not only that, you want to see why they eat the way they do, the times they take, the kind of food they eat, how long they live. You are actually collecting that information to map their family, their lifestyles and so on. You're not supposed to go and say you're living life wrongly. That's not the approach you should take. You should then understand them. That's one. Second, you don't have a questionnaire and reading out that questionnaire to them because they have never been developed to respond to you that way. So you narrate stories to them and you pick up the responses from storytelling, the platform or the medium they're used to. So that's very ontological. You're not testing something, which is epistemological. Epistemological, it can either be deductive or inductive. There are a certain set of propositions, you convert them to hypotheses and you test them. That's the logic of scientific discovery. We call it epistemology. But remember, you have to distinguish between one and another. You're not going out to study a certain group of Aboriginal people, say in the in Nicobar Islands or in Andaman Islands. Some of them are hostile to civilization, and then you go and want to test something with them. That's not how anthropology works. The logic of scientific discovery, there's inductive, deductive, there's abductive, retroductive. Some of them are participative. If, say, you are relying, you are accessing the support of researchers in universities to find out who the criminals are, to assist the police, sometimes you become a participant in the process. You become a participant in the process. You're not going to test anything there. In order to identify them, one. Second, if you want to see how the root causes of what gets kids into taking drugs, for example, it requires different forms of study. It requires participation at the same time, first to identify the group without scaring them away. Second, you may not even reveal yourself as a researcher. Third, you want to see that you are uncovering, you are finding out the real causes of it. Whether it's peer group pressure, whether it's meeting up with others, whether it's a group of potential pushers who come and do all this to them, or whether it's intergenerational in the sense that the father was an addict or the brother was an addict, it carries on. Similarly with crime. It has been established, I had a PhD student too, even though Gary Becker, the Nobel laureate, he claimed that the poor are likely to steal. But he had this model in the 60s. He made this point that between the risk of getting caught and your willingness to face that risk will establish whether you will commit that crime. Now, you know, motorbikes often don't observe red lights because in Malaysia, if you are riding a bike, nobody catches them. But cars are likely to be caught because the cameras to catch them. Motorbikes, the cameras cannot catch them because motorbike number plates in front are this way. And in any case, they don't. So he made the point, the poor are likely to steal. But that largely may explain only blue-collar crime. More research by others have shown that the poor may have lower values for their life because they're starving. For example, they're starving or they're facing difficulty in their lives, and therefore they're willing to take risks. But most of the time the organizers are rich in the background. They're not willing to die, but they're leaving the guys who are poor to face the risks of getting killed. Now, that sort of research has shown that it's not necessarily being poor that leads to this kind of problem. And that research also reveals very often, if someone is caught for crime, very often you can trace a link with the brother or the family on violent crime or exposure to addiction, or say the husband forcing the wife to be into prostitution and so on. There's lots of studies to show those parts of it. But that requires not doing inductive and deductive research. That requires getting into abductive research. Now, I will avoid this retroductive simply because we don't have time, unless there are questions. Now we have novelty in research. I know when you're a graduate student, I suppose most of you are graduate students, am I right? You want to do the best of your thesis, you want to do something earth-shattering. But I think 99% of them don't actually get there. And the problem of continuing with that ambition is it will just delay your process. If you manage to appropriate that synergy in that time, so be it. Great, you've achieved it, like Stiglitz became a professor after his PhD in 3 years, and he's a Nobel laureate now. But he didn't get it then. Now, a number of works actually eventually becomes Nobel Prizes, not discovered so much at that time, but they actually start with the PhDs. Now, that's considered for students as seminal. It's a bit like the physicists. For the physicists like Richard Feynman or even Einstein and others, they need to have discoveries that we call revolutionary in the Thomas Kuhnian sense, scientific revolution, which are path-breaking, path-extending, epochal. Now, that sort of work, if you are harboring to do that in your PhD, you will never finish a PhD. When I went to do a PhD in Cambridge, there was a book, Do's and Don'ts, and they actually mentioned many names that were placed first class, not only first class, but first in Cambridge and Oxford, meaning they were the best students, never finished PhD. Because somehow their concerns were about things that were much more than the requirements of a PhD. So don't attempt doing that. If I had one student who never finished PhD, he was a first class student engineering from Melbourne University. He got a GMAT score of 799 out of 800 went to Chicago, finished his master's, but with me he didn't write a single chapter. He was a manager with IBM. And he felt that he needed a PhD. He kept telling me he only wants to do it if he's going to create something earth-shattering. To use his language, if he never found one, he never wrote one. He's gone back to become a manager. Now, seminal is redefining tenets of theory. But remember that it's not just the ability to do that, but to get acceptance. And you know, it's not a simple task, because the incumbents themselves will do their best to maintain their hegemony, their control over the frontier. You may have great ideas, but the process is very difficult. In the process of going through, I will mention, you can test a set of propositions, and consistently you'll find evidence to refute those conjectures that were considered to be the set of propositions to establish the theory that they have. And in your evidence, even panel data that you use with time series and as well as cross-sectional